York. We're going to go to the border now, where the recent spike of migrants at our southern border creating new headaches for President Biden, turning now to FEMA to help manage the wave of unaccompanied children. Earlier this month, the president's Homeland Security Secretary refused to call this a crisis, instead labeling it quote, a challenge. But top Republicans say things will likely get worse before they get better.
In the springtime, we usually see the numbers go up, so I believe we're going to see an upward tick. One of the Border Patrol estimates is we're going to see as many as 117,000 unaccompanied children alone by the end of the year.
All right, well, Byron York is joining us now. He's the chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor. So, Byron, the Biden administration not calling it a crisis, but certainly treating it like one, as FEMA is deployed to handle crises. Semantics aside, though, yesterday, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said, quote, a Border Patrol facility is no place for a child. So it appears FEMA's job will be to find and expand, I should say, suitable facilities, he went on to say, for those children. So the question to you, Byron, is how can FEMA work in concert with Customs and Border Patrol and HHS or DHS to begin to solve this crisis? I mean, what's the first step beyond what they've done?
Well, they're looking for anywhere they can find beds that they can use to house these unaccompanied minors who are coming over the border. I mean, everything they're saying says there's no emergency, but everything they're doing says there's an emergency. FEMA obviously is the federal emergency management agency. So they're trying to find some way to increase capacity. One thing they're not doing is trying to limit the number of children who are coming across the border and the adults who are behind this. An 8-year-old child does not wake up in the morning and say, I think I'll cross illegally into the United States today. There are adults behind this. And the administration, rather than trying to stop this, is trying to increase the capacity here on the U.S. side of the border.
Well, and I understand your point.
Come over here to stay.
Well, I understand your point. I mean, right now you've got more than 3,200 migrant children in those border facilities there at the border, and they're trying to make sure, they're not supposed to hold them beyond 3 days, but half of them have already reached that limit and surpassed it. So they're trying to accommodate what's, the crisis at hand. Senator Cassidy of Louisiana saying, to your point, that the message has to be clear that the border is closed. So here's another way to look at it. If President Biden goes to the source, I mean, what's the approach with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala? How can the U.S., Byron, assist or advise those governments to quell the problems at the root?
Well, when you hear people, in my opinion, when you hear officials like Jen Psaki, the White House spokeswoman, has said this several times, that the Biden administration is going to attack the root problems, the root causes of this migration, that means they don't really know quite what to do now. And fixing root causes takes a long time. Making some of these countries into stable, democratic, peaceful, affluent states will take a very long time. And in the meanwhile, we have all of these children and others coming to the United States illegally. And if I might add one thing, I think we could use a lot more press coverage of this, and I don't mean that the press doesn't want to cover it, but the Biden administration is not allowing.
I get your point.
I
don't know that they're not allowing press. I mean, everybody has the freedom to go to the border and report on this situation. Now, if you want to have access to the president, I understand that, but let's not listen. The point here is I have you on, Byron, because I think you have a good mind, and I think you may have something to add to the conversation in terms of fixing the problem, not just blame, doing the blame game. That's been the problem so far, because this crisis at the border has been a persistent problem across multiple administrations. Now it is on President Biden's watch, and he has to do something about it. If the Northern Triangle countries, those governments, can't stem the flow, then specifically, what do you think physically, tactically, strategically, what kind of steps the Biden administration can take to stem that flow, to fix the problem right now? Besides, you're right, there is a big problem with messaging, and those human smugglers are taking advantage of it. Parents are taking advantage of it. They seem to think, because he did roll back some of Trump's policies, immigration policies, they seem to think, great, let's just go to America. Now's the time to do it. So how can they fix that? That is a problem.
Well, the Trump administration came up with a plan of forcing people who are asylum seekers, and most asylum seekers, once their cases are considered, are denied asylum. The large majority do not receive asylum in the United States. It came up with a plan to make them wait outside the United States, in Mexico in this case, while their cases were considered. And the Biden administration has done away with that. I'm not sure exactly, short of building enormous facilities here in the United States, or just releasing people into the United States to live with either families or people who will take them. I'm not sure that there actually is another solution. And I will say one thing. Problems get solutions when there is an outrage over them. And if you remember, with the whole Trump kids in cages things, the administration acted very quickly when that became a huge controversy. And I'll read you just a quick thing from the Washington Post. In recent days, there have been more than 3,500 unaccompanied teens and children stranded in steel and concrete detention cells designed for adults. If we had press coverage of those, if we had photos of those, there would be outrage, I think, and then you might have quicker action.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think people are outraged. I think the media is covering it. We're definitely covering it. It needs the attention. I hope that the Biden administration will continue to push. I hear you that perhaps they should not have, kind of allowed them to come in, maybe keep holding them in Mexico like was happening in the former administration. But listen, we're going to keep watching it, and I just want to make sure that we have conversations that we can try to move this forward, because nobody wants an open border. Nobody wants that, right? Right. Okay, Byron York, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.